Now, for many, it will feel like a lifetime ago, but the UK's decision to leave the European Union took effect just 5 years ago this week. Now, in that time, we've had 4 different prime ministers, each with varying levels of relationships with their European counterparts. And the current Chancellor, Reeves, has claimed that Brexit has damaged the economy and that Britain should consider joining an EU customs deal. Do you think that this is fair? Now, after 5 years, has Brexit actually been a good thing or a bad thing for Britain? Or do you think that actually Reeves is right on this one? 0207 862 2222 is the number to give us a ring. Reem, you're from the Institute of Economic Affairs. How do you think it's going, Brexit?
Yeah, no, so I think that Brexit itself has allowed us to have so many different levers pulled, but we haven't pulled those levers in the first place. So as a result of Brexit, we have so many different freedoms. We're able to join things like the CPTPP, which is a bit of a mouthful to say.
Rolls off the tongue.
It rolls off the tongue, which allows us to trade with so many different countries that we otherwise
wouldn't trade with them before?
We couldn't have a free trade agreement with those countries because the European Union restricted us. Now, I would actually say there are so many different things that we could be doing after we left Brexit, after we left the European Union, but we haven't done those things. So, for example, we still impose tariffs and quotas on Moroccan tomatoes, which means that tomatoes in the UK are still very expensive, and we still have those regulations and those tariffs and quotas because of our legacy with the European Union. We often actually copycat legislation. So we often have new regulations imposed in Parliament that are actually copying the European Union. And actually, to Rachel Reeves' point about the customs union, out of all of the parts of the European Union that we could rejoin, for example, the single market, which would allow us to trade a lot more freely, the customs union is probably the worst of all of those parts. And actually, what we need to be thinking about is really taking advantage of those Brexit freedoms. Now, to say that Brexit has damaged the British economy or ruined the British economy is just not true. We know that the difference in impact on imports and exports is basically unchanged in comparison to the European Union. A lot of the problems we face at the moment are as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, the shocks as a result of the Ukraine-Russia war. So actually, the current situation we face is definitely not as a result of Brexit. It's as a result of bad government policies.
It is true, since we have left 5 years, we suffered a global pandemic and Russia invaded Ukraine. So is it fair to judge the effects of Brexit on the last 5 years?
Ukraine and the pandemic have definitely made it trickier to understand the impact, but in my view, it's been a disaster. And I'm someone who absolutely respected the result. I advocated for us not having a second referendum because I think it was the biggest exercise in British democracy possibly ever, and I thought it would have been totally disrespectful to that process if we'd had a second referendum. However, I'm not going to be bullied, not by you, but I'm not going to be bullied by right-wing narratives pretending that it's been a success. It has been, and I repeat the word, a disaster. The Mayor of London, let me just quickly give an example of this or give some evidence of it. The Mayor of London ordered an independent review, commissioned an independent review by Cambridge economists, I think, and it reported back just this month. And if it is to be believed, and of course it's difficult to be precise because we're dealing with counterfactual history, what would have happened, then people across the country, about £3,500 worse off last year as a consequence of Brexit, and Londoners £2,000. You shake your head, but this was an independent review, and it was done by experts.
On what? Because this is all counterfactual. This is all looking at things based on whether or not we were part of the European Union or not. These are entirely difficult factors to do that. So I would dispute that particular
Okay,
review.
but you can dispute that point of view. But actually, what's interesting is, Reem, I don't think you're saying that Brexit has been the grand success, because
we've not taken...
as many of people on the Brexit side of things seem to agree that the levers, as you call them, haven't been pulled that should have been pulled. Do you think that's the problem with Brexit, or Brexit fundamentally was never going to work?
No, I think we had pretty poor government in the shape of the Conservative government for quite a while after Brexit. But if you voted Brexit because you wanted to become wealthier, it's been a disaster. If you voted Brexit because you wanted to reduce immigration, it's been a disaster.
I mean, this is a really important point.
If you voted Brexit because you are particularly keen on sovereignty and as full independence as you can get as a country, then maybe you've achieved that. And I respect that as an argument. But let's please not pretend it hasn't made us poorer, and let's please not pretend it did anything to immigration levels other than them going higher up.
So we have a higher opportunity, a larger opportunity opportunity now than we did before Brexit to become wealthier, to actually do all of the wonderful things that we could be doing. We just haven't done that because we've had such poor governance.
But how long do you have opportunity before it just isn't
the opportunity is open there, but the point is we've had failing governments over the last 5 years. I mean, the Conservative government over the last 5 years have unequivocally failed on Brexit. If you voted to leave the European Union because you wanted us to take back control of our borders, we have failed. We've got higher immigration levels now than we ever have as members of the European Union. And actually, the types of migrants are actually a lot more difficult to integrate in the UK than Europeans. So actually, if you're somebody that voted for Brexit for that reason, then the government have totally failed on this. If you're like me, I was too young to vote for Brexit during 2016, but if I would have voted to leave the European Union, and I would have voted to leave the European Union because I wanted the UK to have control over its own regulations, have control over our fisheries, have control over our own taxation levels and the way that we look at the way the government is sending over money to the European Union, having those conversations.
Do you think we have control over our fisheries?
No, we don't, because the government themselves have entirely failed on this matter.
Maybe the model of actually Brexiting is what is at the heart of the failure of Brexit. Yes, I agree with you that government has failed in all sorts of ways, but Brexit, it was predicted to be bad. I think it was predicted to be bad in an exaggerated way. I don't think it's, it hasn't been a total catastrophe, but we are all poorer off, or the vast majority of us, and certainly on average, poorer off as a direct consequence of Brexit.
Well, that's interesting.
Because of the government's policies over the last few years.
You agree on quite a lot there, but that's a specific area which you disagree on, is when it comes to our pockets. Do you feel financially worse off since breakfast? Gosh, that would have been a really short period of time since Brexit. Why does that always happen? Ray from Nottinghamshire, what's your thoughts on it? Brexit 5 years later, is it good or bad for Britain?
Well, as a former importer from Southeast Asia, what is wrong? Nothing wrong with Brexit in its principle. What is wrong was the terms and conditions that Boris organised.
The ready-made
meal? He was
meal?
more interested in the date of the completion of the treaty than he was the content, and it's the content that's wrong.
That you're nodding your head to that?
Yeah, no, I think that's really important, actually. You mentioned the ready-made deal. He sort of said this is an oven-ready deal. The problem, actually, and I think that to Ray's point here, if you are somebody that's importing or exporting goods from the United Kingdom, you want to be aware of the fact that there are various different quotas and tariffs that mean that you have particular decisions to be made about where you're actually exporting products, or indeed in this country, importing. Now, the brilliant thing about free trade, and I would have been pro-Brexit because I believe in freer trade, actually, the best thing about Brexit is it means we have the opportunity to reduce those tariffs and quotas.
But we do, but we're not. You brought up tomatoes. Why are we not doing it?
So the problem isn't Brexit. The problem is bad governance. The problem is this government have failed on Brexit, not Brexit itself.
But companies have been pulling out. We've got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of fewer jobs in the UK as a consequence of Brexit.
No,
according
not as
to
a consequence.
This report.
The report
well,
is
you keep
wrong.
saying that,
not
but
that is just
an ideological defence.
No, it isn't.
Of Brexit,
Tell me, where
which
is it?
has
No, it isn't.
failed.
No, it isn't. This country is more inward-looking. It is effectively less freer. We see less free trade as a consequence of us leaving the European Union, but that isn't inevitable. We could be freer. We could be opening ourselves up to globalisation, to freer trade across the world.
They've been trying to do that.
The government have failed on this.
Liz Truss would be telling you that she tried
Why
to
have
do
they
that.
failed?
Why did they fail if it was so easy?
The one thing that would make this country so much more prosperous is a free trade agreement with the United States. That would make
hold on, Reem, isn't that what was missing? Was we forgot that other countries were going to have a say? Isn't that because America's been dragging their feet? I think Morocco doesn't want to reduce
and look at
the
Donald Trump.
tariffs.
Donald Trump is threatening. He's threatened yesterday one of their relative neighbours, Colombia, with massive tariffs if they didn't take illegal
25%.
immigrants back home. 25%. And he said if they didn't comply within a week, it'd be 50%. Yeah. You seriously think we're in a better position having to deal with Donald Trump and his threatening behaviour than if we were still part of the European Union?
No, that's not the point.
We've made ourselves much weaker strategically
we already
and
have
economically.
a free trade agreement with the European Union. Union. So that's not the problem. The problem is that we continuously copy regulation and red tape from the European Union, and we have failed to repeal any of it. So this country is not a better place to do business because we effectively still have all the laws that the European Union.
Why do you think we have those laws?
Because we've got bad governments that don't care.
Because actually, Brexiting was going to be a damn difficult thing to do.
We need governments that actually have conviction and want to repeal all the regulations the European Union imposed on us.
All right, Lisa from Inverness, what's your thoughts when it comes to Brexit? Has it worked out?
No, definitely not. I'm not from Inverness. I'm from the Isle of Skye.
Oh, sorry. OK, it said Inverness here. They are very different places. And
both beautiful.
both in Scotland. I mean, you're close enough, quite north. So tell me, Lisa, what's your thoughts on Brexit?
I couldn't believe it myself. I was actually more upset with the result of Brexit than I was on the independence vote. We were told in Scotland that if we voted yes for independence, we'd be pulled out of the EU. And then look what happened with Brexit. But the real impact in the Highlands of Scotland is workers for the hospitality industry. Mm-hmm. They used to all be filled with people from Eastern Europe. Mm-hmm. You know, cleaners, cooks, waiters, waitresses, bar staff, and now hospitality, hotels are closing left, right and centre because they can't get staff.
Well, and why aren't the younger people wanting to work or do those sorts of jobs? Because that was the idea, wasn't it? That actually we would get homegrown talent into those jobs.
Well, that's not happening. People are moving to Glasgow and Edinburgh to work, so because they don't.
Why are they choosing to go to Glasgow rather than stay in Skye and work in the local hotel or B&B?
Because in the Highlands, at least, it's a seasonal job, and if someone wants to work full time year round, they need to go to Glasgow or Edinburgh.
Do you think that was a miss, Reem?
I think actually part of the problem is that we've got such a huge welfare state and so many people are on out-of-work benefits.
Well, hold on. No.
This is the point.
Lisa's not talking about those individuals. These are young people, and I know them because I went to university with a lot of these individuals that grew up in they're to Hebrides and they grew up in the islands, and it was too small for them. The work was seasonal, and so they came to the big cities. Yeah, that was totally. Always going to happen.
No, well, it wasn't always going to happen. The problem is that we've purposefully chosen to have a selective immigration system that means that people from Eastern Europe are much less likely to be able to get those seasonal work visas. We could.
So who could get them?
Well, we don't have that kind of immigration system now. We've got the points-based system that means it's much more difficult anyway. It's actually very difficult for the hospitality sector to hire anybody. And part of the reason, the point that you made earlier, Storm, we said we were going to have more homegrown domestic supply of labour. Actually, the problem is that a lot of those people, and no fault of their own, the system incentivises them to do so, are on out-of-work benefits. We saw between 2021 and 2022, 63,000 students went from being economically inactive because they were students to then being economically inactive because they were on out-of-work benefits. This country is facing a scandal, and it's a welfare state that is incentivising.
That might be that. But hold on. I just want to come to a
rubbish.
conclusion on Lisa's call because she's called out with a personal issue that affects her in her area, and thank you for doing that. But what you're saying about the benefit system is not helping, Lisa. That's not the problem that they have there, and it is a completely different issue in terms of we have higher immigration but nobody's going up to Skye to work in the hotels. Lisa, thank you for calling with that. David from Lancashire, what's your view on this? David? Oh, Barry from Conway? Oh, we've got David back. David, sorry for that. I don't know what happened. We must have put the wrong wire in the wrong plug for a minute there. What's your thoughts on this?
I work in the construction industry and I think it was actually a very good thing.
Great.
Because can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How has it benefited the construction industry?
Because you don't have as many East Europeans coming here to work for, I would call it a pittance. Mm-hmm. They drove the British workers' wages down. Now, what you've got now is people coming from the rest of the world and they're just not even working. They've got, as the woman said, they're on the benefits. The benefit system is so bent out of shape, it would probably have to be cancelled. So I think that they should have...
Hold on, we're talking about immigrants on benefits because...
No, I'm saying about was Brexit good or bad? I said yes, it was bad for the country because you've got more people coming not to work. But now you had these Europeans coming here to drive wages down.
Yeah,
Now,
I'm not.
when Boris went to get the deal, make a deal, Parliament made an agreement that they had to have an agreement to leave the EU. Now, if you tell someone you've got to have an agreement before you start, you can be sure it will be the poorest agreement you can get.
Okay, David.
They will offer you nothing.
I get your point here. You think it was bad for the country. Your immigration point, I'm not sure is quite accurate there, but you said it was bad for the country, but good for you personally and good for the construction industry. And it did. That was part of the reason that people voted for Brexit. In fact, quite a large proportion of people voted for Brexit because they wanted wages to go up rather than being held low because of immigration, because of immigrants working, ironically, and not working. David, thank you very much for your call. Thanks for all your calls on that.